Welcome back to the Gary Sutton Show on WSBA. Joy Brighton is the author of Sharia-ism is Here. We've heard a lot about Sharia law and talking about ISIS and Al-Qaeda and other places around the world that are trying to invoke this. And she is with us this morning here to talk about her brand new book, which is called Sharia-ism is Here. Joy, an honor to have you on the show. Good morning to you.
Good morning. Good morning. I just lost you for a second. Thanks for having me.
We got you back now. Joy, you call it Sharia-ism is Here, the battle to control women and everyone else. Tell us a little bit about, what piqued your interest in writing this particular book.
What, I'm not hearing. What made me write this particular book?
Yes. I mean, what really kind of got you started? Was there one particular incident that happened, or was it just a general thought about what Sharia really is?
Well, it's a little bit. I'll keep it very short. I'm actually I'm a Wall Street person. I'm an investment banker.
Okay.
I know that's a dirty word these days. I was asked to investigate the Sharia finance market in 2005 by some folks who were experts in terrorist financing through the banking system. And what I found was that this new market, which was being touted as this great new market, was actually very hard to understand, clouded with innuendos, no disclosure, no due diligence, and had a real element of control that was not compatible with capitalism. And I took that, and as I started to talk to bankers and congressmen about this kind of this new financial market, what I realized is that people had no idea what Sharia was. It's just called Sharia finance.
Right.
Sharia is about control, in the same way that it was about control of the financial markets when I investigated that. Sharia is not about a religion. Is when you have rules that you follow as an individual. A political movement is when you impose those rules on everyone else. Sharia-ism, which is what I call the political movement of radical Islam, is an attempt to control others by imposing rules on others.
When you look at Sharia and the idea that Sharia Islamic law is somehow religious, it is to only a degree, but it is now a political application, that is what you're saying.
That's right. I mean, listen, if you want to follow your own Sharia and you want to say, I don't believe in criticizing my prophet because I believe it's a sin, that's fine. You're practicing your religion. But once you say to me or to you, you shouldn't criticize my prophet, and you will be threatened on that, now you've crossed the line. That's no longer religious. You are imposing your way of life on someone else's, and you're violating the U.S. Constitution, which is all about free speech. How big
is the movement here in our world today, and more specifically, because this is where we live, how big is the movement here to try to invoke some form of Sharia law in our country?
I think this is a matter of semantics. I don't think anyone is imposing Sharia law on this country. I think the threat is that Sharia law or Sharia-ism is being tolerated in this country, and it's being tolerated at the highest levels of our government. And it's being tolerated by, first of all, we've got a president and we've got cabinet members who refuse to name the enemy as radical Islam. They won't even say radical Islam. They won't talk about Sharia. They won't talk about jihad. They won't say the word. They won't say Muslim. So that is tolerating Sharia law, because one of the big things about Sharia law is you cannot criticize anything about our religion, who we are, what we do, how we do it. So that is the fear. There was recently a poll saying that 33% of Americans fear Sharia.
Right.
Again, in my opinion, it's not the fear of being imposed. We're not going to be made to walk around in burqas and have our wrists cut off. However, we are tolerating a very, very, very dangerous political movement that we're seeing the effects of it all over. And in terms of how big is it in this country, how many people are tolerating it? Well, let's just look at where Sharia-ism is happening in this country. ISIS is one face of the Muslim Brotherhood, just like Taliban, just like Al-Qaeda. The Muslim Brotherhood is the monster. It is the strategic monster of radical Islam and Sharia-ism. Dubai banned the Muslim Brotherhood in November of 2014, so did Abu Dhabi, so has Egypt, so has Saudi Arabia. In an effort to defeat ISIS, one of the things they've done is ban the Muslim Brotherhood, because they understand that deep connection. In this country, we have a very strong network of Muslim Brotherhood front organizations that our government refuses to acknowledge that the Muslim Brotherhood is anything but a political, nonviolent organization. And that is the problem. That is where Sharia-ism is being tolerated. That is where it's growing from. We have, in terms of ambassadors of ISIS or ambassadors of Sharia-ism in this country, how many do we have? I know everyone's focused on a few hundred folks who are being lured to go over to ISIS. 35,000 to 40,000 U.S. inmates are being converted in U.S. prisons, are being converted to radical Islam. We know this is a fact. You can Google this up. Radical Islam, year in and year out for, call it several years. It's much more than that. But Huffington Post most recently said it was, recently reported this number. So those are ambassadors of Sharia-ism. And we look at the people, the Oklahoma guy who beheaded his coworker. We look at the fellow who took the jihadist, whatever, who took an axe to NYPD. We looked at a lot of these lone wolves, quote unquote, that are roaming around. These are not lone wolves. These people have converted to radical Islam in U.S. prison. These people are ambassadors of Sharia-ism. Very, very dangerous and very, very real.
We're talking with Joy Brighton, author of Sharia-ism is Here, and the battle to control women and everyone else. I talked to someone one time, Joy, and they said, there's different kinds of Sharia. And one of the things that happens in religion is we get a lot of double talk sometimes on what things mean. I think in Islam, it seems like we get more of it, this kind of double talk that what you say isn't necessarily what you mean kind of stuff, and that there's a lot of different kinds of Sharia law. And one always asks the question, okay, what about all these other Muslims around the world who practice who come to countries and seem to get along okay? Do they just reject the idea of Sharia law, or do they accept part of it? What have you found out in your research?
Well, again, I think it's the idea that they respect individual liberties. They can choose to follow, whatever they want to follow. Right. But once they try to impose it on someone else, now all of a sudden it's Sharia-ism. It's the political movement. So you've got lots of Germans. They weren't all Nazis. Okay, so you've got lots of Muslims. They're not all Shariaists. They're not all following Sharia-ism. But this idea of control, you've got Muslims who want to control others and justifying on the basis of some religious law. Okay, that's not a religion.
Right.
There's another breeding ground of Sharia-ism in this country, which is very, very dangerous, and that is the network of mosques. 80% of the mosques in this country are Saudi-funded or Saudi-owned. We know that we've already had some information about the Boston bombers who attended a mosque, the Islamic Society of Boston Mosque and Islamic Center. We've known that has been a radical mosque for years. The story is resurfacing again and again. Mosques in this country and around the globe are a huge problem. This is really an incredible new development. President al-Sisi of Egypt has closed 27,000 mosques in his country. 27,000 mosques who are a limited size, because his point is these are not mosques. These are small shadow. These are shadow organizations that are harboring. He doesn't say Sharia-ism, but I'm saying Sharia-ism, radical Islam, and they're operating in the shadows of Islam. So what he's trying to do, I think it's going to be very effective, is to try to say, okay, here are the mosques that we bless. Here are the large mosques where we can control, we can see what's happening. And all these other little mosques, quote unquote, we don't believe. We are fearful that these are not mosques, but these are kind of what I call Sharia command and control centers.
So we, in a country that says we tolerate, we accept all religions coming here, how do we do that? Now, you write in Chapter 8 about creeping Sharia and strategy to impose Sharia law in small steps. So the question would be, do we still welcome certain religions here if those religions are being used to kind of tear down from the inside the United States?
Well, we have to welcome, we have to welcome Muslims into this country, but we've got to start separating religion from politics. What would I do if I were president of the United States? I would ban the Muslim Brotherhoods in this country. We know who they are. We know how they operate. All these religious discrimination lawsuits in 2010, 2% of the population in this country was Muslim. 25% of all religious discrimination lawsuits were launched by Muslim groups. okay, saying, don't criticize us. So the Muslim Brotherhood is the way, if you rip out the roots of the Muslim Brotherhood in this country, you say you label it as a terror organization, as Egypt, as Saudi Arabia, as Dubai, as Abu Dhabi have done, and you've done you made a huge dent in eliminating Sharia-ism and shutting it down. Enormous.
Very pragmatic kind of approach there. And the idea is that if you represent terrorist organizations, and again, though, we circle back to the problem you identified at the beginning, we have a president who embraced the Muslim Brotherhood when they took over in Egypt. Now, of course, al-Sisi has taken over, and no invitation yet for any chats here in the United States, although I understand he did meet with some senators yesterday from our country. But point being, the president doesn't seem to want to latch on to al-Sisi's type of government. There are some questions about how they took over and what they did with the Muslim Brotherhood, but they have certainly dealt with them harshly.
We also have a situation of, I want to say Norway, which is now deporting radical Muslims. How are they figuring that out? They've identified radical mosques in their country. They're saying those people who are affiliated with these radical mosques and who have threatened infidels in some way are being deported. They're being deported back to Afghanistan, back to Somalia. What's interesting or what's scary about this whole thing is that Somalia refuses to take these people in, as does Afghanistan. But that's a very big step by Norway. We also have a Muslim mayor in Rotterdam, Netherlands. He can say this because he's Muslim. He has come out specifically. Rotterdam has a huge problem with radicalization, internal radicalization of its people. And he has said, you don't want to live by our laws? You want to live under Sharia law, and you want to try to control others, specifically want to try to control others and impose your way of life here? You need to leave. So this is, to me, a huge positive steps. And again, he's a Muslim mayor. He can say it. He'll acknowledge that. The person in Norway who's doing it, I guess she's the president of Norway, is a woman. There you go. A woman gets it.
You got to have a woman out there leading, right? Chapter 9 of your book, and you come back to this. You call it Sharia lawfare instead of warfare. And we're talking again with Joy Brighton, author of Sharia-ism, is here. You talk about how our U.S. judicial system is taking some pretty strategic abuse right now to kind of set legal precedents for Sharia acceptance. Give us an example there, would you?
Sure. Okay, I'll give you an example of, all right, there was and I know everyone points to the same example, and people say this is just one. If you read the book, there's much more than one, but we can't even afford to have one of these. Okay, so in New Jersey in 2009, there was a woman who was wed in Morocco. She was, I believe, 17. He was older. They came to New Jersey to live. The neighbors were repeatedly hearing her screaming. He was sexually assaulting her, I guess you could say. Eventually the police came, and eventually she agreed to press charges. She had some lawyers who came to her and said, this is marital rape, and this is illegal in our country. At the lower court, the judge, she was only seeking a restraining order. She was too afraid to actually, to say, I want my husband sentenced for marital rape. And at the lower court, the judge said, you know what, this fellow does not believe that he's committing a crime. This is a cult in his country. He believes that he has the right to control his woman, to control his wife.
Wow.
And he does not, and he was not even given a restraining order. And the danger of this is, even if it's one case, it sets a legal precedent. We have a legal system in this country that's all about legal precedents. You hear lawyers talking about, this Roe versus Wade or all these other things, because those are precedents that are set. We cannot have precedents like this set. This woman actually went to the higher court of appeals, and it was overturned. How many women actually have the strength to go to even end up in U.S. courts,
right?
Okay, in the first place, and then go to an appeal? She had a huge coterie of lawyers who were helping her, who were supporting her, women's rights groups, and things like this. And there are other examples of this. So this is a situation where we have to make sure that when in a U.S. court of law, that judges understand foreign laws, whether they're Sharia or Chinese or anything, because there are foreign laws that conflict with the U.S. Constitution on issues of marital rape, on issues of custody, on issues of divorce.
Right. And I think you make a great point. Now, we are seeing world leaders standing up. We saw in the last several weeks, we saw the King of Jordan. We saw al-Sisi of Egypt leading bombing raids against ISIS because of the fact that their people were beheaded or burned alive in a cage. I mean, these people that are doing this, I mean, you look at them and you say, where did this barbarism ever come from? And so we see them standing up. Do you see evidence out there about other world leaders who are standing and taking action against the Sharia-ism type movement?
I know that for a while, France has been quietly deporting radical imams.
Right.
I don't know if they're still doing that. I know that Germany had put together a campaign. Germany has a huge problem of radicalization of its citizens. It had put together a campaign saying, kind of like a poster that said, "Wanted." Okay, and these posters said, "Wanted, my daughter. She's not acting like she used to act. She's talking about hating Germany. I don't recognize who she is anymore. I'm concerned she's being radicalized. Call this hotline number." They had this huge campaign to try to identify who's being radicalized and an outreach for their families to call. This program was shut down by Muslim Brotherhood groups as racist.
Wow.
Again, you see the problem that's going on.
Yeah.
You've got countries trying to address these things, and then you've got these Muslim Brotherhood groups that say that they are moderate, the voice of moderate Muslims, which they are not. I want to down these things.
I want to take a break here, Joy. I want to come back. You've talked about the failures of U.S. leaders to address the Sharia threat, but are there leaders out there in Congress, for example, or governors who are taking action? I'm going to ask you about that when we come back. Joy Brighton is our guest this morning, author of Sharia-ism, is here. Fascinating topic to try to find out what these people are thinking and how they want to try to maybe infiltrate the United States and the rest of the civilized world with this brand of barbarism. Welcome back to the Gary Sutton Show with Joy Brighton, who's written Sharia-ism is Here and has really done a great job of laying out the case this morning. By the way, you can go to joybrighton.com to check it out and also buy the book. Joy, about a minute and a half left with you here.
Yeah.
You talked about what U.S. leaders are not doing to face this Sharia threat right now. What are there good things to report on some of our U.S. representatives and our governors out there?
Yes, there are good news. I mean, we've got about maybe double handful of congressmen who have introduced a law banning the Muslim Brotherhood in this country. These are the same people that tried to have that asked Congress to investigate the infiltration of the Muslim Brotherhood in 2012, and our government said, we don't have a problem. So maybe this will pass. One of the problems, as you know, that's going on in our country is that if it's coming from a Republican, no one wants to hear about it.
Right.
Let me just say that I am a liberal. I am pro-choice. I am for gay marriage. I am, as I believe, as liberal as you can get. And there is a problem in this country with radical Islam and Sharia-ism. And we've got to stop looking at the messenger and start looking at what's going on.
I couldn't agree with you more. It's not about right and left. It's about right and wrong, and what is going to destroy this nation. And we better start looking at this nation instead of looking at our side pretty soon, as you've been able to do. Sharia-ism is Here, the battle to control women and everyone else. You can buy
on Amazon.
Amazon.com. You can also go to Joy Brighton. That's JoyBrighton.com. Purchase the book right there. This is a book for our time. I think we need to be able to read it. Joy, I look forward to talking to you again. Great job this morning. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. Let's come back.
Take care. We'll do it.